Listen carefully. The story I am about to tell you was never written in your history books. It was whispered in confessionals, carved into hidden beams of abandoned churches, and sealed in archives labeled "Do Not Open." What you're about to hear was buried for centuries, not to protect the guilty, but to protect you from knowing the truth. In the remote hills of western Pennsylvania, 1745, the Whitmore family arrived under the banner of faith. Nathaniel Whitmore, a skilled craftsman, found the churches across the colony's artifacts of divine beauty. Chalices of silver, reliquaries carved from oak, altar boxes said to bless those who touched them. His wife, Elizabeth, serene and unblinking, carried herself like a woman anointed by God. Their 4 children moved among the congregations like angels in human form, quiet, obedient, unnervingly watchful. The churches welcomed them, paid them, praised them. And when the first disappearances began, a widow here, an orphan there, no one dared connect the holy Whitmores to the horrors in the woods. Because miracles began happening, the sick were healed, the barren conceived, soldiers claimed protection in battle after touching Whitmore relics, and so faith blinded them to what was being fed into the fires of devotion. This is not just the story of one family. This is the story of how belief, pure, desperate belief, can be twisted into a weapon. By the end, you will not trust your own prayers. By the mid-1700s, Pennsylvania was a land torn between piety and frontier survival. The Great Awakening had swept through the colonies, igniting churches with feverish zeal. Every denomination, Quaker, Presbyterian, Lutheran, sought to prove themselves the chosen vessel of God's favor. And what better proof than miracles? Nathaniel Whitmore saw opportunity in that hunger. Publicly, he was a craftsman of holy objects. Privately, he studied preservation techniques from European medical texts, methods to halt decay, to transform flesh into relic. He believed he was not desecrating the dead, but elevating them, turning human remains into conduits of divine power. Their workshop sat at the edge of dense woodland. By day, sunlight streamed through its tall windows, catching on polished chalices and carved crucifixes. By night, those same windows glowed faintly with candlelight, hiding the shadows of what truly occurred below. The first victim was Mary Collins, a widowed healer known for her charity. When she vanished one winter night in 1745, townsfolk whispered of wolves or hostile natives. They never suspected the quiet Whitmores, mourning alongside them in church pews. 3 days later, a reliquary appeared in Philadelphia, containing, unbeknownst to all, a fragment of Mary's hand. A miracle soon followed. A sick child touched it and lived. Word spread. Churches begged for more relics. The Whitmores complied, selecting victims whose reputations for virtue made their remains all the more holy. No one questioned, because faith, when desperate, does not ask where miracles come from. The Whitmore children were raised in silence, not just the quiet expected of well-behaved offspring, but the kind that holds secrets. Thomas, the eldest, obeyed his father's every command. Mary and Sarah tended the household, eyes lowered but always listening. William, the youngest, possessed an unsettling fascination with death. He collected animal bones from the woods, dissected small creatures, whispered prayers over them as if baptizing them into sainthood. Their mother, Elizabeth, taught them discernment, the art of knowing which souls were destined for sacrifice. She would watch congregants during worship, head slightly tilted, eyes half-lidded, in what she claimed was divine revelation. Later, she would name them quietly over supper. That one, her light burns brightest. In their minds, this was service to God. Nathaniel convinced them, convinced himself, that Protestant churches needed relics to rival Catholic power. Without sacred remains, how could the colonies claim divine favor? So they built their empire in whispers and shadows. Victims were chosen for their purity. Widows, orphans, devout parishioners known for good works. Their disappearances were mourned, but never investigated deeply. Frontier life was perilous. Death came without explanation. And the Whitmores offered explanation enough. These were saints, called home by God. As their relics spread across Pennsylvania, miracles multiplied. Congregations swore to healings. Crops thrived after prayers. Wars were survived against impossible odds. Each testimony fueled demand, and demand fueled the Whitmores' hunger. But behind every miracle lay blood, washed from workshop floors, buried in shallow forest graves. By 1750, the Whitmores were untouchable. Their workshop had doubled in size, apprentices crafting ornate vessels to conceal darker contents. Ministers traveled for days to purchase their wares, leaving with boxes containing holy fragments of saints whose names were whispered, never documented. Church elders believed they were protecting congregations from idolatry by keeping relics secret. In reality, this secrecy shielded the Whitmores. No public record meant no accountability. No questions asked meant no answers demanded. Nathaniel's network stretched beyond Pennsylvania, into New Jersey, Maryland, even Virginia. Ministers competed quietly for Whitmore relics, convinced possession meant divine favor over rival churches. The Whitmores exploited this hunger, raising prices, feeding ambition, and carefully choosing which communities would receive miraculous blessings. The more power they gained, the darker their methods became. Elizabeth's discernments grew frequent. Victims were no longer chosen solely for virtue, but for utility. Children whose innocence magnified relic potency. Travelers whose disappearance would cause little stir. In Sarah Whitmore's later journal, discovered in the ruins of the Whitmore estate, she wrote, "We believed we were chosen, that God Himself spoke through Mother. Each soul we prepared, we prayed over. We wept, yes, but we called it mercy." Mercy. That was the word they used as they bound their victims. Mercy, as they drained blood into basins lined with herbs and salt. Mercy, as they sealed fragments into velvet pouches embroidered with golden crosses. And when miracles followed, mercy seemed justified. Until one man began asking questions no miracle could silence. Dr. Samuel Winters, a physician from Lancaster, first heard rumors of Whitmore relics in 1753. A parishioner swore her son's fever broke after touching a fragment of saintly bone. Curious, Winters examined the artifact and found inconsistencies. The preservation was crude, recent. Far too recent. Winters suspected fraud, not murder. He assumed Whitmore relics were animal bones or cleverly crafted fakes. But as he dug deeper, questioning ministers, tracing rumors of missing parishioners, he noticed a pattern. Disappearances clustered around the Whitmores' travels. Widows, orphans, the devout. He planned to confront Nathaniel. He never got the chance. On a rain-soaked evening in November, Winters vanished en route to Philadelphia. His horse was found grazing near the road. His satchel lay open in the mud, papers scattered. His body was never recovered. Weeks later, a Presbyterian church in New York unveiled a new relic, the fingerbone of a 12th century martyr, purchased quietly from Nathaniel Whitmore himself. Winters' disappearance barely registered amid frontier chaos. But his notes, recovered years later, would form the foundation of whispered accusations that trailed the Whitmores into the next generation. The family had survived scrutiny before. This time, however, something shifted. Ministers began guarding secrets more closely. Congregations stopped asking where relics came from, only whether they worked. And the Whitmores, emboldened, expanded their enterprise further, seeking purer victims, stronger miracles. Because faith, once corrupted, always craves a higher dose. By the 1760s, the Whitmores' influence was undeniable. Their relics were whispered about in taverns and pulpits alike. Holy fragments that healed the sick, warded off misfortune, and gave congregations a sense of divine protection in a brutal frontier world. Yet behind closed doors, the family's methods grew more ruthless. Elizabeth's discernments now targeted children almost exclusively. She claimed their innocence burned brightest, making them vessels of unmatched purity. Nathaniel hesitated at first. Children drew more attention, but the prophet silenced him. Child relics sold for 5 times the price of adult ones. Their miracles? 10 times as dramatic. The youngest Whitmore, William, thrived in this new phase. His fascination with anatomy evolved into skill. He discovered ways to preserve delicate tissues without rot, to fashion relics indistinguishable from centuries-old artifacts. Ministers marveled at the authenticity, never knowing they held the remains of children stolen from orphanages just months earlier. Publicly, the Whitmores were pious, generous patrons of their local meeting house. Privately, they expanded their cellar, carving tunnels, adding hidden rooms lined with salted stone and copper basins. The smell of iron and herbs clung to the soil around their property. Neighbors joked of holy smoke drifting from the workshop at night. None dared investigate. It was during this period that the Whitmores' name first crossed into rumor, not as saints, but as something darker. A few whispered of witchcraft, of blood rituals cloaked in scripture. Others dismissed it as jealousy. After all, hadn't miracles followed their work? But as disappearances spread beyond Pennsylvania, into New Jersey, Virginia, even the Carolinas, murmurs turned to fear. Faith had birthed something monstrous, and soon, that monster would outgrow its hiding place. The Revolutionary War brought chaos and opportunity. As the colonies fractured, supply chains collapsed. Churches desperate for sacred artifacts turned to the only reliable craftsmen left, the Whitmores. Their business flourished amid war. Death was everywhere. Missing bodies raised no suspicion. Nathaniel played both sides. To patriots, he offered relics of ancient martyrs said to guarantee victory. To loyalists, he sold the same under Catholic names, claiming divine protection for the crown. In truth, both relics came from the same cellar, carved from the same corpses. The war also masked an escalation. Under cover of battle, the Whitmores widened their hunting grounds. Refugees, abandoned children, wandering soldiers, all became potential saints. Their cellar overflowed with fragments, each labeled with false origins. Saint Agnes, 9th century. Blessed Theophilus, 12th century. Lies wrapped in velvet, sold for gold. After the war's end, America celebrated freedom. The Whitmores celebrated profit. Their wealth now rivaled old families. Their name, revered in church circles, whispered in secret by ministers who swore to guard their holy supplies. But cracks formed. 2 apprentices vanished after discovering too much. A third fled, babbling of bones beneath the floor. He was never found. And then came Daniel Foster, the apprentice who would one day destroy them. For now, he obeyed, silent and watchful. But in his journals, hidden behind loose stones, Foster recorded everything. The screams, the prayers, the rituals disguised as blessings. His writings would survive long after the Whitmores were gone, buried in the archives of Philadelphia's Historical Society. The question is, did anyone read them in time? By 1782, the Whitmores' operation entered its most macabre phase. The family began targeting orphans deliberately, children from church-run asylums, already forgotten by society. Their innocence made for the most potent relics, according to Elizabeth's visions. Joseph Miller was 10 years old when he vanished. Quiet, devout, small for his age, the perfect vessel. He disappeared from an Episcopal orphanage in Philadelphia during a storm. 3 weeks later, a church in Virginia reported miracles surrounding a relic, the preserved heart of a child martyr. Word spread like wildfire. Parents brought sick children to touch the relic. Healings were proclaimed. Donations surged. Other churches demanded similar artifacts. The Whitmores obliged. Over 3 years, 16 children disappeared across 3 colonies. Their names faded into forgotten ledgers, their lives sanctified in lies. Congregations believed God had sent these relics to bless the new nation. In truth, the blood of children baptized its altars. William Whitmore, now a young man, perfected his preservation craft. He experimented with waxes, salts, and copper linings, innovations that made relics appear centuries old. Ministers marveled at the realism, never suspecting they were handling bodies just weeks dead. But William's obsession darkened further. He began keeping trophies, locks of hair, teeth, not for sale, but for himself. A collection hidden even from his family. Meanwhile, Daniel Foster grew uneasy. The longer he worked, the more he realized miracles were not divine, but psychological. Faith, he observed, required blood, and the Whitmores provided it. He began documenting everything, preparing for the day he might expose them. Foster's first attempt to escape came in 1785. He fled under cover of night, journal pages sewn into his clothes. But William followed. They caught him near the river. For 2 days, Foster was confined in the cellar, forced to kneel before relics he'd helped create. Nathaniel offered him a choice, loyalty or silence. Foster swore obedience, but in secret, he memorized everything, names, dates, methods. His chance came in 1792, after Nathaniel's sudden death. With the patriarch gone, leadership fractured. Elizabeth clung to visions, Mary sought respectability, Sarah managed finances, and William, unhinged, pushed for expansion. He argued for martyring entire congregations to flood the market with relics. Even the sisters recoiled. Foster seized the chaos. He escaped again, this time successfully, and carried his testimony to Philadelphia. But what he revealed shocked even hardened investigators. Not just murder, not just fraud, but systematic exploitation of faith itself, an entire theology built on blood. Foster described rituals disguised as sacraments, prayers masking killings, churches complicit through willful ignorance. Authorities moved cautiously. Too many prominent ministers had purchased Whitmore relics. Exposure risked destroying entire denominations. So the investigation stalled. Files were sealed. The Whitmores quietly vanished, their workshop abandoned, their names struck from records. Only Foster's journal survived, hidden in archives labeled unverified. Until now. 2 centuries later, renovations of a Quaker meeting house uncovered something chilling. A reliquary sealed within the altar. Inside, beneath centuries of dust, lay a fragment of preserved bone. Human, small, unmistakably that of a child. DNA analysis traced the remains to the 18th century, the exact period of the Whitmore disappearances. This discovery reignited whispers long buried. Were the Whitmores real? Were their relics still scattered across America? Historians combed archives, rediscovering Foster's testimony and Sarah Whitmore's journal. Their combined accounts revealed a pattern too precise to dismiss. Disappearances, relics, miracles, and silence. More disturbing were the relics themselves. Across rural Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland, churches still possess ornate boxes of unknown origin. Never opened, never questioned. Their congregations call them tradition. Few realize the truth. Some still contain human remains. And here's where you, the viewer, come in. Look closely at your local church's artifacts. Ask where they came from. Ask why their histories begin abruptly in the late 1700s. Ask why no one ever speaks of the Whitmores. Because silence isn't ignorance. It's protection. Faith is power, and power corrupts. The Whitmores understood this better than anyone. They learned that belief itself, pure, desperate belief, can turn horrors into holiness. If miracles followed, no one cared about the blood. This is the lesson buried beneath their story, not just what they did, but why it worked. Humans crave meaning. We want to believe suffering serves a higher purpose. The Whitmores exploited this yearning, offering relics that transformed random tragedy into sacred narrative. A murdered orphan became a martyr, a vanished widow became a saint, and communities embraced the lie, because the lie comforted them. Think about that. How many lies comfort you today? The Whitmore story isn't just history, it's a mirror. Look into it long enough, and you might see your own reflection, kneeling, praying, never questioning where the miracle came from. Halfway through this descent, I'll ask you something dangerous. If you've followed me this far, you already feel it. That pull in your gut, that whisper in your ear telling you this story is changing you. To seal it, comment these words twice. I see through the altar. Not just for the algorithm, though it will push this truth to others, but for yourself. Writing it marks the moment you stop being a spectator and start becoming awake. Because from here on, the story gets darker. William Whitmore did not die with his family's downfall. His trail vanishes in 1792. No burial, no record, nothing. Some say he fled west with surviving relics. Others whisper he continued the work in secret, passing methods to hidden sects. Every few decades, strange reports surface, miraculous healings linked to relics of unknown origin, children disappearing from frontier towns, unmarked reliquaries found in crumbling churches, always in the shadows, always dismissed as superstition. But patterns don't lie, and the Whitmore pattern endures. Modern researchers have traced over 24 unexplained relics to Whitmore designs. Same carvings, same gold-embroidered velvet. Many remain in active churches. Some are displayed openly as anonymous donations. Few congregations know what lies inside. Opening them is rare. When it happens, the results are always the same. Human remains, meticulously preserved, centuries old, yet eerily intact. What does it mean when faith feeds on flesh? Here's the part no one wants to admit. Miracles still happen. Churches guarding Whitmore relics report inexplicable healings, sudden recoveries, strange blessings. Science can't explain it. Faith won't question it. And so the cycle continues. Relics built on blood still answer prayers. Does that make them evil or divine? That's the trap of the Whitmore legacy. Truth doesn't matter. Results do. You've heard the whispers. You've followed the blood. You know the truth. Now look inward. How many miracles in your life rest on unseen sacrifices? How much of what you believe is borrowed from bones? The Whitmore family is gone, their name erased, but their work? Their work lives on every time faith demands proof, and someone is willing to pay the price. This story was buried to protect you. It failed. What you do with it now, that's between you and the altar.